right. So lots and lots and options. So this week of working with whatever it is that we're working with. Um, so I just want to say before we start, one of the things that occurred to me, we the Saturday mornings, and it's kind of there's a tradition of we like Dharma talks. I don't know, we like entertainment, whatever. We like talks. And I do want to say that in some ways the talks are basically useless. It's the talk is not relevant. Um, so sure, the talk itself can have like interesting things and interesting concepts and things like that. And to a large extent, talk can provide entertainment. Um, I personally prefer the method of um, using the um, using the meditation exercises as the teaching tool, as opposed to the talk. Um, but also to acknowledge that the talk itself, there is a practice called listening, listening to a Dharma talk, which is to sit and just listen openly, so that there is is a practice involved. So on the one hand, we can say, oh, the talk is relevant because it's just concepts. On the other hand, the talk is very relevant if it produces practice. So, um, so that's kind of like just to remember that because I think we've been involved in a lot of words and concepts and ideas in the last week from the election and stuff. And at the end of the day, we need to figure out how to practice, um, how to use the practice with it. Because we can analyze the elections and our feelings around the elections forever, but if we don't actually do something with it, in terms of practice, it's not going to be useful. So one of the things as we're looking at the sutra on Dharma seal is, and this you see it in often off it's said many times in many different sutras. The practitioner goes to a forest and sits under a tree. Okay? That's number one. And number two, and it can be a she or whatever, it doesn't really matter. And the other thing is, it's then the practitioner looks at his or her own body and mind, the five skandhas, my body, my perceptions, my mental formations, my um, I lost something. The body, the perceptions, the feelings, the mental formations, and the consciousness. So I still didn't get that list right. It doesn't matter, which is actually part of the whole business, is that the list is irrelevant. Um, so um, I'm looking at myself. So these are the two basic things, and we see that everywhere. So what is this going to the forest and sitting under a tree is basically, it doesn't have, it can be a beach, it can be in your room. It doesn't have to be in the forest, but it suggests that go and disconnect from all the drama. Stop the drama of the mind. It will happen regardless. And also go to where that feels supportive, where you can connect. When I'm under a tree, I can connect with more things than if I'm in the midst of a parking lot or whatever. So whatever feels nurturing to us, that produces a certain level of joy, let's say, is good. And it doesn't have to be the forest, but there is this thing like disconnect a little bit from all the mind games, from all the drama, and find some nourishment. That's step number one. And step number two is look at the five skandhas. Look at yourself. And we see that even in the Heart Sutra. It says the Bodhisattva Avalokita, while moving in the deep course of perfect understanding, shed light on the five skandhas. So she finds everything by looking at herself. It's not like some knowledge that she gets by going to a Dharma talk. She going sitting under the forest and, under the tree in the forest, nurturing yourself and looking deeply. So that's really what this is really all about. Um, so, regardless of all the other concepts that we put on. So the sutra itself, um, on the Dharma seal, and actually I wanted to put in a slide again just because of these damn numbers. So we have 3 Dharma seals officially, um, of the seal of impermanence, the seal of non-self, and the seal of no notions or nirvana. And we have 3 doors of liberation: the door of emptiness, the door of signlessness, and the door of aimlessness, which is, whoops, oh, something happened. I thought I was sharing a slide, but I wasn't. So let me see if I can do that. Um, okay, so I think, yeah, this is being shared. So we have the 3 Dharma seals of impermanence, non-self, and nirvana, and then we have the 3 doors of liberation: emptiness, signlessness, and aimlessness. And the reason why it's nice to have it up front listed is because we get all very confused about all these damn numbers, and thankfully there's only 3 of these, so it's not as big a deal. Um, but I'm what this sutra, which this sutra is called the Sutra on the Dharma Seal, but it actually talks about the 3 doors of liberation. And the suggestion is basically they're all the same. It's like we don't need to make such a big deal about all these the differences. And the sutra actually goes through. It all starts with emptiness and impermanence. Okay, and so whether we call the non-self and emptiness is basically the same thing. And so impermanence and emptiness, we can say, are the same thing. One is like in terms of time, things are impermanent, they keep changing. Because they keep changing, they're constantly different, meaning they're getting composed of different things, therefore they're empty of a separate self, non-self. Therefore, we can let go of notions. So in the sutra, it asks us to look at its form or color, or something physical that one sees. Form is what one can see, and to see that it is bitter, that it's painful, because it's not going to be there like in 5 minutes or in 500 years. But if I'm attached to it, it's going to be painful. Okay? That it's empty, that it's constantly changing, therefore it's not one thing, and that it is changing, that it's not there always. That it's and then I look at everything within myself, at my feelings, my perceptions, my mental formations, my consciousness, as well as my body, and see that everything that I associate, that I say is me, is basically quote unquote empty, that it's interdependent, that it's changing. And once I've done that, then I can start, then the Buddha suggests looking at the perception, meaning looking at what I see, what I hear, what I smell, taste, touch, and think. Okay, so now I'm looking at my actual consciousness, at the doors into my consciousness, and I'm saying, and what he's saying is, I think Thai translated as to dissolve it. Yeah, see the dissolution of form. The Chinese suggests something like to extinguish or to exhaust it. So look at it, so keep looking at it until it gets exhausted. And what you're supposed to see is that it's a sign that what I'm seeing, what I'm smelling, what I'm hearing, I'm kind of hearing or seeing or whatever, perceiving the tip of the iceberg. I'm perceiving the sign of it, but it's actually composed of much more. How do I know that? Because when I look at any feeling or at my breath, as we did in the meditation, or anything, I'm seeing that it's constantly changing and it's composed of many things. It changes into other, the in breath changes to out breath. It's dependent on many conditions. So what I call in breath, I'm narrowing the scope and saying this is in breath. But when I'm dissolving the name in breath, I'm seeing there's a diaphragm, there's the lungs moving, there's air outside, there's trees producing oxygen. So I'm seeing that the in breath is actually, and the in breath actually becomes an out breath. So I'm seeing that in breath is just a concept, it's a sign. I assigned it a name. But if I can dissolve the name, I can touch more. And it's going to be relevant in a moment. So, because it sounds very intellectual. um, and through that door, so then I can enter the third door of aimlessness, which literally in the Chinese is non-doing. So when we say nothing to, nowhere to go, nothing to do, this is the wu zhou is the Chinese term that's literally nothing to do. There is nothing to do. Okay, that's aimlessness. So when I get non-self, non-self doesn't mean just me, mean non-self of everything, that everything is composed of everything else. Everything is already, therefore everything is already there. My in-breath is already there in the out-breath, because the out-breath will end and produce the next in-breath. Everything that I see or touch and myself is composed of everything else, of causes and conditions. That's why we did the meditation at the beginning, to see that everything arises from causes and conditions. Feeling comes from other feelings, from the mood I've had because of whatever I ate or someone said. So it produces a feeling and then it goes away. So when I see then it can't be grasped. I can call it a feeling, but it's just a sign. I see that this feeling or this person or whatever it is has always been there, but it's manifesting right now as frustration, as anxiety, as anticipation, but it's always there. It's not independent. It's not just, it doesn't exist on its own. If it doesn't exist on its own and all the conditions are already there, then there's nowhere to go. So this notion of I'm already here, even when I don't appear to be here, I am already here. And even when I'm gone, I'm already here. I just have to look at it, to sort of combine all the conditions in a slightly different mathematical formula to see me, even when I'm not here. Of course, that's not always so easy because we're attached to, but I like, you know, I like this. I like this person that's dead, and I don't want to see them in the other conditions. I want to see the manifestation that I'm used to. That's this. I'm seeing the sign, and I'm attached to the sign. If I can let go of that, then I can be aimless because there's nothing to do. It's all here. It's all here. There's nowhere to go. So that's kind of like my interpretation of the sutra, if you like. Like I said, the Dharma talk is not very important. So, but really looking at, because everything changes, because everything is impermanent, therefore it is empty. It doesn't have a solid identity. It is composed of everything else. Because it is empty, it can go beyond the sign because it is composed of everything else. So whatever I see is just one aspect. There is more to it. It shows us the sign, but it's way more than the sign. And because it's interdependent, because it goes beyond the sign, it's already there. There is nothing to attain. It can't be attained because it's already there. There's nowhere to go. That's the so-called entertainment part of the Dharma talk. And but really to then how do I apply that to my experiences? So looking at this last week and looking how, on Monday, I will speak. I can only speak for myself, obviously, in spite of the fact that I exist in everyone and and everything. There is still the manifestation of me and my own. When you're not a Buddha, you can only see so much. Um, on Monday, there was this, okay, all the polls say that, Biden's going to win. Everything looks good. It's like, we're getting rid of Trump, whatever. And, for me, that's supposed to be a good thing. Um, and then, Tuesday night comes and you sort of go, well, but Biden's not getting the large enough margin that I want to see. And then I have to remind myself, wait a second. We've talked for a long time about how Tuesday night is not going to look good for Biden, that we have to count all the other votes. So, it's like I have to do this constant check on my feelings to sort of say, look, this is just the mark. This is just the sign. Don't get attached. There's more here. And then Wednesday morning comes and Wednesday evening comes, and here we are Saturday, and there's still, a certain amount of unclarity. And of course, there's huge amounts of disappointments. Well, we didn't take the Senate, and the House doesn't look so fabulous. And what's going to, there's all this anxiety that keeps coming. So how does one work with that? I mean, that's really, that's been the challenge this week. And then this morning I had, at 6 o'clock, I let Toro out. And usually he comes back 20 minutes later, by the time I have breakfast ready for him. And he doesn't come. And he actually only appeared back at 8:45. And it was a very anxiety ridden 3 hours. I'm going out and calling him, and I'm imagining all sorts of things that can happen, and all the stories of all the things that have happened to different cats, etc., etc. And thankfully, he did come back. And then I'm looking at, okay, and what am I going to do if can I see the signless nature of Toro? Am I willing to really, put my mouth, put my whatever it is, put my money where my mouth is, or something like that? Can I really work with this? Um, so it's a lot more challenging, when there's an attachment. And I will say I do have an attachment around my concepts around Trump, etc. Then I had a wake-up call on Wednesday because there was a lot of activity on Facebook. And so I decided I'm not doing the news. I do the news in the morning and in the evening and in between. It's okay. I don't need to know who won and what percentages and how many electoral votes everybody has. But I did get on Facebook, and of course that was all on it. And then there were lots of posts of people, the current was the fashion began, my heart is broken, or I feel a pit in my stomach, or something, that kind of thing, about, even though not about the results, but that 50% of the people in this country are voting for Trump, or a little less than 50%. But what a huge disappointment. How can I live with this amount of bigotry, with this amount of blah, 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 blah? I mean, all this stuff comes up. That was a real wake-up call for me, because I was like, oh, wait a second. Yes, I totally relate. I totally get, I feel that also. And then something's really wrong here. So this is the signlessness of a Trump voter. This is my meditation this week. And I'm not going to claim that this is a great, great meditation, that should be, put in the sutras or anything. I'm just, this is what I'm working with. The so-called Trump, so let's take it away from the Trump voter. So let's bring it to the Inquisition, because that was 500 years ago. It's a little bit more. I have less attachments. Okay. The Inquisitor, whom I see as a torturer and murderer, and who've done incredibly horrendous things to to people and the environment, by the way, already 500 years ago, is a person who really believes that they're a good, pious Christian who is turning the other cheek. It's like, whoa, I don't see them that way. I remember a few years ago, I was at Blue Cliff, well, quite a few years ago, actually. Um, and there were two, I'm not sure if they were Jesuits or they were some other order, two monks, Christian monks, and they were wearing brown, big sacks with a robe at the waist and a hood. And for me, I was scared of them. I mean, it was like, I guess it was kind of like the Ku Klux Klan for a black person. For me, that image of Christian with the robe, I think, really did it. I'm not sure what it is, and somebody had to explain to me, that this is just what this particular order wears and whatever. It was just very difficult for me to overcome this fear, which I guess has been bred in me, presumably from the Inquisition era, of Jews in Europe. So, because I've never seen it, it's not fear that's mine. There's no conditioning under which I would have seen this kind of dress code and associated with Inquisition or fear or anything. I grew up in Israel. There were no Franciscans, Jesuits, I don't know, whatever that um, style dress. I've never seen anything like this before. So but somehow in my consciousness, it's there because my consciousness again doesn't belong to me. Somehow it perceives things that happened hundreds of years before I was alive. You know, So here are these inquisitors who think they're pious Christians who are turning the other cheek. They're supposed, in theory, their theory and my theory should match up perfectly. We should love each other. And then I was thinking, so what went wrong here? It's almost like I want to turn the other cheek and my neck is stuck. I can't turn. Something doesn't work according to my perceptions of what turning the other cheek is. Now, this is not to justify inquisitors or anything like that. This is not to give them excuses, but just to say, can I see more? I don't think any Trump supporter wakes up in the morning. A few of them might, there are people who are really, really mentally unhinged. There is sickness out there. Mental sickness does exist. Okay, to ignore that wouldn't be fair. That's not seeing reality. But to believe that 50% of the population is mentally ill doesn't work either. The average Trump supporter does not get up in the morning and say, how can I be a really true asshole? That's not what they're doing. They really, they believe that they're trying to promote prosperity. I don't want to speak for them because it's obviously hard for me, but they really feel that they're trying to protect good values, whatever they are, however you describe them as make America great again or whatever, they're not my values, granted. But at the core, they're not different than me. At the core, they're trying to promote something for the so-called welfare of all beings. It's just that we see the means very differently, and we may very well see the actual welfare very differently. But at the core, when I go beyond the signs, and this is the hard part, to see something like this as a sign, something that affects me so clearly in the here and now. This is not the Inquisition. It's not 500 years ago. In 200 years, it'll be a lot easier to talk about, oh, the Trump and the Saunders supporters are really very similar. There's very little differences, from the perspective of 200 years, it may look like that, but right now it doesn't look like that at all. So the ability to see beyond and soften, because the most important thing for us now, we all say that, is How do we find reconciliation? It's my clock. So looking at how do I apply this teaching of signlessness, the doors of liberation? And again, that it all comes from emptiness. It doesn't, we can call it a zillion different things. It's all pretty much the same. So looking at Trump as as empty, that he's a sign of our whole society, not a sign I like. But we all have selfishness, we all have we want material comforts, we all have certain things, and we all have a 5-year-old that screams into us. None of us want to make it be like Trump, make it appear like Trump, but we all have that 5-year-old that says, no, damn it, I'm gonna sue you. I know the feeling, I have it in me. The fact that it's manifesting so strongly suggests that we've all collectively moved a little far, and we need to look at it. So to blame Trump doesn't really work. And that the Trump supporters are actually not necessarily assholes. Can I see that? Because without that, there will never be reconciliation. We cannot reconcile in this country unless we can do that. So, how can I go beyond the signs? To go beyond the signs means to see a larger picture. So, another tool that's given to us, we call it by another name, not seeing signs, is also there's another name for it, which is called equanimity. Equanimity is upeksha in Sanskrit, and in Chinese it's shi. So in the Sanskrit, upeksha means to go to a higher place, like to go up to the roof so that you can see a larger vista. Because when I don't have equanimity, I'm latching onto the view that I have, and I'm only seeing that, and then it bothers me. When I kind of look at it from above, I see more. I can soften around it. I can be more equanimous about it. In the Chinese, they chose to translate it as to abandon, to let go. That's what equanimity. If I can let go of the view that I have of what I'm seeing right this second, then I can have equanimity around things. I can have space around things. So how can I find equanimity? How can I? Tai has often said, if you try and look at things in 300 from the view of 300 years, can I see in 300 years, what will we say? How will this era of Trump, of Amy Barrett, of Kavanaugh, how relevant will it be? And what will we say the shifts really were? Are they as dire as I think they are, or are they actually ushering something totally different that I don't know, that I don't see? So just having some patience. And yet I also want to change. I do want to change. It's not like, okay, let it be what it will be. There's nothing to do kind of thing. There is nothing to do and there's something to do at the same time. But to bear in mind that causes and conditions will do the thing, but I am still part of the many, many causes and conditions. I can't be so arrogant as to assume I'm the only cause and condition, but I'm part of them. So I can still do something. I can still move the causes and conditions in a direction that I believe is a worthwhile direction. And to also accept that if they don't move, then it's okay. No attainment. Some attainment will happen. It's like the shore of liberation is out there. My wave may not reach the shore of liberation, but some other wave that I have maybe was the great grandfather of, like this wave I ended and another wave started out in the ocean. Some wave will reach the shore of liberation. I would like it to be my wave. Sure, of course. So to attain change, I have to embrace everything. Otherwise, it's too hard. But I can still be a factor in change. And then looking at myself, how before election day, when things didn't, like after election day, things got a little tighter. I and lots of people, we were talking about creating reconciliation in some manner. And it felt very easy. And afterwards, when I got tightened up, when things didn't go my way, reconciliation didn't feel so easy anymore. So it tells me that it's just a feeling and that there's a cause of uptightness that makes it feel much harder, but it still should still be possible. And what I need to do is see if I can soften the uptightness, the disappointment. Yes, sure. If we had won the Senate and the House and the White House with very large majority, of course it's easy to reconcile when you're a winner. It's like it's so easy. It's like you just expect everybody to just roll over. And maybe one day they will, or maybe everything will roll over and be different. And the last thing I would say is about this week is looking at how difficult, and this has been true for actually this whole year, to be with not knowing. And we talk about don't know mind. And we talk about it, then we get sucked into it. And looking at whether it's about the coronavirus and that all these, we want to know how to control this virus. And does a mask help? And do we need to do lockdowns? And what kind of, all these arguments that come from different sides. And everybody feels that they know. And look at Sweden and look at this and look at that. And look, there's to each point, there's a counterpoint. And how hard it is for us to accept that we actually don't know. And then, of course, there's the whole faction that says this virus is basically a myth. Yes, it exists, something, but it's not as big as people make it out to be. In which case, it doesn't matter. But the fear is still as big as it is. So, at least that's my view. So, there are so many views on this that we're all trying to latch onto knowledge. We want to say, this is how it is, therefore I can control it. And we can't. And the same thing with the election. We love these polls, even though we already know from 4 years ago that the polls are going to be wrong. And we've proven again that the polls can't be right, which is fine. And yet we want to, we latch because we want to control. So how can I let go? Just as a question, letting go of wanting to know and accepting that the only ground there really is no ground. There is no assurance of anything. The only assurance I can have, the only ground I can have is my own practice, my own creating space within myself. So it's really taking refuge within myself. It's really the only thing, and that it's highly dependent for most of us on going out to the forest, sitting under the tree, and reflecting on myself. All the nice words about emptiness and signlessness and aimlessness and blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, it's all about practice. So all the words, all the Dharma talks don't matter except my practice. So if the Dharma talk is creating a situation that I can sit and open, that's all that matters. So thank you. That's all I had to say. I do have some, I do like to do some an extra meditation after the so-called talk. kind of be able to take the concepts and see if we can turn them inside us, and do something with that. So would people like a 2 or 3 minute break before we do that? I see a yes. All right. So let's do that, and I'll invite Bill before we start. Thank you. Looking at my feelings and my mental states in the past few days, before the election, after the election, as results came in, at surprises, disappointments, frustrations, anticipations. Seeing that all these mental states come and go, constantly changing, and are dependent on many conditions. Seeing impermanence, taking refuge in impermanence. And looking at my states of mind during these past days, and especially my perceptions and my judgments, looking and seeing that they represent a tainted view. They only reflect part of things. They do not reflect the whole reality, which I may not be able to see at all. Looking to see beyond the marks, beyond the signs. Can I see a larger picture? Can I see a fuller reality?
looking at these states of minds in the past week and contemplating non doing, aimlessness, acceptance of the myriad causes and conditions, and at the same time moving towards clarity as to how to affect positive change. Can I find that balance of a bodhisattva riding the waves of birth and death, and at the same time also responding to suffering? Creating reconciliation. Can I reconcile? Can I embrace those who represent the other 50%? I ask myself what it is that is needed for reconciliation to take root. Contemplating forgiveness. There is forgiveness as a legal term where I forgive another person, another party. But the forgiveness of the spiritual dimension is always forgiving myself. I forgive myself. I embrace the situation I was in. I accept that I was hurt. Sitting with not knowing. There are no assurances. There are no absolutes. I cannot have solid ground with assumptions, requirements, or prerequisites. The only ground is no ground.